Thank you for joining us today. I want to welcome everyone to our virtual Beacon Point Women's Advisory Institute event. We are incredibly excited to spend some time with you today. My name is Miriam Santiago, and I am a Senior Client Service Associate for Beacon Point Advisors, and I'm based in our Northern California Bay Area office. I want to thank you for taking a break from your daily routine for what will hopefully be a moment of calm in your day. At Beacon Point, our goal for clients is that they feel healthy holistically across their financial, physical, and mental well-being. We spend a lot of time as a firm focusing on investments and financial planning, but today we're going to switch gears and take a moment to invest in our physical health. I'm sure many of you, like our team at Beacon Point, have transitioned to working from home for a good portion of this year. I recently came across a New York Times article titled "The Pandemic of Work from Home Injuries." And it got me thinking about the ways in which I have been taking care of my body and moving throughout quarantine, especially when I'm at home sitting at my desk all day. And this ultimately led me to reach out to our guest, Dr. Annalise Wenzel of Ever Athlete Performance. I first met Dr. Annalise when I began working out at Ever Athlete, participating in their group workouts and trainings. Her experience and expertise have certainly made an impact on my life, and I hope you'll take something positive away from today's event for your own personal benefit. As a chiropractor, she works with patients on a variety of mobility issues to get them back to the activities they love, on top of educating people about the best ways to move your body and stay in good shape. I want to quickly say, before we get started, that I'm going to start out with a conversational Q&A with Dr. Annalise. Then we'll move into a quick 20-minute stretching session. So have your yoga mats ready. And then we'll go into a 5 to 10-minute live Q&A to wrap up the event. So if you have any questions for Dr. Annalise, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box found at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to get them answered. And with that said, Dr. Annalise, thank you for joining us here today to share your insight. I'll hand over the reins to you for now. Why don't you tell us a little more about yourself and your work?
Well, first of all, thank you. And I just want to start off by saying that how cool that this company Beacon Point and that everyone that's watching here is affiliated with is, usually focused on financial health, but now you're also focusing on physical and mental health. And to me, that really, really stands out, especially during such a crazy time that we're all living through as we speak. So yeah, as I know Miriam just said, I am a doctor of chiropractic at Ever Athlete here in the Bay Area, Palo Alto, if any of you guys are local. Up until the pandemic hit, we had this beautiful, huge training facility, and that's where I got the pleasure to work out with Miriam. This is where we coached, group fitness, personal training, and we also had a clinic under the same roof where we got to treat our patients. And so who really comes into Ever Athlete is honestly all different backgrounds. I know we have athlete in our name, but we kind of let the patient choose if they're an athlete. That can mean anything really, but it's essentially anyone who is suffering from musculoskeletal injury or a movement complaint. But I notice with this patient population, all our patients are inherently motivated and really eager to get better themselves. They just need a little extra guidance, or that's where our expertise comes in, just to help guide them along the way. So I get to almost be everyone's cheerleader and then provide what I need to along the way. And then the end goal for all of us here at Ever Athlete is to just empower our patients, and then ideally, leave them better than they were when they first came in. But yeah, so since the pandemic hit, we shut down our physical location for the fitness side of things. We still have the clinic open here in Palo Alto, but we've actually transitioned to everything virtual, which has been a crazy steep learning curve. So I'm doing, lots of personal training and coaching virtual. I'm even doing some of my patient visits virtually. And even though it's been crazy and there's, part of us that feels like we lost out on this beautiful training facility, there's still a ton of silver linings of just, being able to hone in our niche even more, or, learning all these virtual techniques and how to do things virtually, which we would have never been able to do otherwise. So it's still, trying to swing it in a positive way, a positive mindset of finding those silver linings. But so yeah, so here we are. Super excited to be here.
Thanks so much. So I'm just going to jump right into the interview questions. Since working from home, I've noticed that I move less and get up less often than when I was in the office. So what kind of effects does sitting in one place for a prolonged amount of time have on the body?
Yeah, I mean, this has been literally a conversation with every single patient through this work from home and shelter in place. But to just answer this, I'm gonna focus more on like the posture side of things for, because you could go in so many different directions here. But as we all know, and maybe we don't know, but just as a reminder, we're all incredibly adaptive systems, right? The human body is constantly adapting. And that's not only like personality wise or just like feelings wise, even physically. So, so since we're always adapting, we're also kind of lazy in the sense that our body is always going to adapt into the most efficient or comfortable position. So for us, sitting at a desk, usually sitting in a chair, how we like to explain this is more like a casting effect. So we've all known someone who's either broken a bone, had a cast on, maybe it's been you, your son, your daughter, family member. But I know I've personally broken one of my arms, and it's been immobile for, weeks, sometimes months. You take off that cast and it's all skinny and scrawny and wrinkly and just weird. So no, I know that's kind of an exaggerated example, but now if we flip that and think of like our chair like a cast, like, the longer you spend time in this chair, the more comfortable it is, the more we want to hang back here, and the more we want to slouch, the easier this is making our life in a way. But at the same time, right, that casting effect is we're not moving anymore. So we're building up a ton of tension through the different muscles and ligaments and tendons. And then, with that tension and without moving as much, we're going to start to go through some atrophy, which is a fancy way of saying loss of muscle tissue, right? So then if we have less muscle, we're going to lose a lot of our strength. So then with the loss of strength, then comes a loss of stabilization and motor control, which is just, our body's way of controlling our different movement patterns. And then now here we are with an increased risk of injury due to this lack of protection that we just kind of went through and what we're now losing. But that sounds really, depressing, like, oh wow, great, I'm just gonna be here and just get injured. But the good news is, though, since I said we are adaptive systems, just as much as you can adapt into that casting effect where we're just kind of stuck, and you'll notice people walking around where it looks like they're standing, but it looks like they're still in that seated position, right? We can still do so many things through movement, through manual therapy, so like massage, chiropractic, PT, through exercise, but we can move out of those positions. So that's where I really love to spend lots of my time, as kind of like my expertise, if you will, is to help people adapt out of those positions and try to, make their workstations work for them rather than work for their body, rather than just trying to find this cookie cutter, fix it all approach. Everybody. So, yeah.
And so what strategies do you recommend to increase movement throughout the day then?
Yeah, that's probably my favorite question ever, because that you just have to get creative. And I'm going to stay away from the obvious ones like, oh, exercise more, right? Like sign up for a Peloton subscription or whatnot. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go into like these little nitty gritty things, like things that you're like, oh, I would have never thought of that. And I know everyone's home life is going to be different, right? Whether if you have kids at home, if you're home alone, if you have roommates. So some of the things I'm going to suggest are going to be like, I'm never going to do that. But, forget about those, find something that you can maybe hang on to. But yeah, this is a very common conversation I have with my patients, and it's going to be very individual. But I would say no matter where you start small and stay realistic. Because it's just like setting any sort of goal, right? If you set this incredibly lofty goal, which is good to have, to kind of keep the momentum going, but it's like, day to day, you're not really going to probably feel like you're working anywhere closer to it. So I'm just going to go through some examples that I wrote down. Some of these things I've talked with my patients about, or these are like direct examples, or even things that I do. And for example, something I did this morning is I knew today was going to be really busy. So what I did is I rolled back my alarm clock 25-30 minutes early. First thing I did is I went out for a walk. So I woke up, I literally rolled out of bed, put on a puffy jacket and just went for a 15-minute walk. Feels like nothing, but after that walk, I already got, I think, like 2,000 steps or something, right? So super easy. I don't know if there's many excuses not to be able to do that. Another great example, I have a patient who every time he walks through his garage door, I think it's connected to his house, he has a set of kettlebells right beside the door that every time he walks through it, he does a set of like 10 deadlifts or 10 squats or something. So for him, he just sees the doorway, he walks through it. It's just a habit, pick up the kettlebells and like perform your exercises, right? So it's just like taking off these barriers of like, oh, I have to structure time, I have to structure this. It's just pick a doorway, walk through it, do a squat, do a big reach and stretch, do a twist, do a lunge. That can look, how it looked different for everyone. Another big one I've really come to actually love is we all have smartwatches now, right? Like who doesn't? Either an Apple Watch, a Garmin watch, a Fitbit, or even our phones track all of this stuff for us. Most of them have those most people find them annoying, the little notifications that go off to tell you to move and everyone just ignores them or turns them off. Turn those on, right? Like turn those on and make them help you. They're there for a reason. They've been programmed and designed to make us better, but we all just turn them off and just, I'm just going to ignore that. So as simple as, okay, every time my watch or my phone beeps at me, like get up and let's actually do something about it. Another great thing with these smart watches is our step count. So I have some patients that are maybe getting like 2,000 steps a day, which, on the regular at the office, even though they're not trying, just from moving between office buildings or meeting rooms or going out for lunch, they were, without trying, getting like 7,000, 8,000 steps a day, right? So not only, if you need more objective measures, I think a step count's really great. But as I said before, be realistic about it, right? If you've noticed, okay, I'm getting maybe 2,000-3,000 steps, don't set your goal up to 10,000 because that's going to be a big jump. Go up to 5,000, go up to 6,000, whatever works for you. But let's use these technology, these tools, which I'm usually like, oh, I don't want more technology, but they really can help you in the long run, right? So that's a great one. I've talked to some of my patients who used to actively commute. So people who used to bike to the office, or even were lucky enough to be able to walk to the office, or like walk to the train stop and then get on the train and whatnot. So you clearly had time in your day to fit an active commute in. So make that time again, right? I've even overheard someone say, oh yeah, I still bike to the office and back every morning because it was my daily routine. So I thought that was super cool that someone, is, trying enough to keep their routine as is and just get on their bike and go and get some exercise while they're at it. So just fitting those things in. Having multiple workstations set up at home is also going to provide you an opportunity just to have some micro movement throughout the day. Going on walking meetings, right? I'm thinking of people on the phone going for meetings, move around when you're doing those things. I have a couple more just to go through is setting some timers on your phone. So every time you go to sit down at your desk, hit go on your 45-minute timer. When that timer goes off, listen to it, right? It's so easy just to press stop and just forget about it. It's just like our alarm clock in the morning. But instead, let's actually make the commitment to listen to it and get up, even if it's like literally a walk around your desk, then back down. It's better than nothing. So I know those are kind of all over the place, but I tried to be, diverse. So hopefully that was helpful for someone.
Those are great. You mentioned setting up multiple workstations.
Yeah.
Is it better to have multiple workstations than just a single one? Is that something that you've seen people do well?
Yeah. I'm a huge fan and like believer in variety, right? So it's not as much as going out for a walk to get more movement in, but you're never letting yourself sit back into that cast for a prolonged amount of time, So yes, you still will have, one station maybe with a chair, maybe one station, up at a standing area at home, or maybe even your couch. Like even just changing what type of chair you're using is going to have a significant effect on your body and on your position. So I like to say it's like micro movements rather than, big macro movements. And on that note, I just helped a high school student who is here locally. So she's doing everything virtually. And she was like, I just feel so tight and fatigued by the end of the day. She's also a rower. So she was like, it's impacting my sport now from just sitting at my desk at my screen all day. So we had to get pretty creative, and like within her bedroom, she has her desk with her regular desk chair, and then she brought up her big exercise ball that she goes one class, she's sitting at her desk with her chair. The second class, she sits at her desk with her exercise ball. And then the third class, she was creative enough to completely clear off one of her bookshelf shelves, where she is now pretty much created like a standing desk option. And so she just cycles through these 3 different options throughout the day. And I actually just got an email from her yesterday, and she's like, it is like remarkable what a difference it's made just on like a sense, just feeling good at the end of the day rather than feeling like tight and achy and groggy. So I love the variety. And yes, you have to get more creative. And I understand, we all have monitors and special keyboards and special mouses. So I understand it can't maybe be as rigid or regimented as that, but even just changing it up for an hour, grabbing your laptop and sitting on your couch or sitting at your kitchen table, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, those are all great ideas. I think that a lot of us haven't been thinking about this, so that helps a lot. You did mention that you did have one patient kind of coming in with issues from, having to transition to work from home. Have you or your team at EverAthlete seen an increase in mobility issues since we started this working from home shelter in place?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, yes. And I've noticed it's like one of two things. Either people are coming in with a lot more acute, I would call them, posture or work from home injuries where, they caught themselves sitting on their really soft couch for too long doing their work. And we all know that feeling when we're kind of like shifting to one side, or even like this, how I'm doing this. Anatomically, what you're doing is you're lengthening out one side of your body and then compressing the other side. So then this one person, she came in the next day and she's like literally like stuck sideways. And she's like, I don't know what happened. And I'm like, well, did you work out yesterday? Like, what'd you do? She's like, no, I just sat all day on my couch and worked. And I'm like, well, no, duh. Your hips were probably completely, misaligned just from the soft cushions. You're probably leaning over to one side. So it's a lot more acute. I won't call them injuries, because I wouldn't say there's, real tissue damage to the area, but it's just these acute flare-ups. Another really common one I've seen is people who are used to using a mouse at work, having their whole workstation, and then now moving to a trackpad on a laptop. That's a way smaller movement, and you're using different muscles and scrolling differently. I've had people come in with some, I coin it as like acute carpal tunnel like symptoms. And fortunately, since they are so acute and there's usually like an easy identifiable root cause, it's easier to get down to the bottom of it and then just remove that factor, and then help them get better as they go. But then on the flip side, there's also been an uptick. I am thinking it's really related to stress. So people who sometimes had, weird flare-ups or had this chronic condition, let's say, like a disc herniation, but they were able to manage it, and, they were able to work out, they were able to, be functional. But now with all this added stress, it's like, their bodies are almost like revolting against them. So it's been interesting to help navigate these people in ways that I've never had to before. So trying to get creative with their treatment plans and creative with, sending them home with stretches and exercises, or modifying workstation, and having conversations like this with them more and more, just to remind them that, they're not alone, or they're not the only ones. But yeah, definitely an uptick, unfortunately. in cases like that.
It does help to hear that we're not alone, though.
No.
But you did, and you did mention work areas, and I've noticed that myself. I've changed chairs a few times since I started working from home. I know I've heard of coworkers using exercise balls or changing from the sofa or kitchen counter. What do you recommend people to do to get the most comfort when sitting at their desk?
Yeah, well, first of all, as we've already said, like the more variety, the better. So using an exercise ball, but not having to use it all day, go between your exercise ball or your chair, getting creative, standing, sitting, different positions around the house as much as possible. But I'd be happy to kind of take you through like a checklist of, if I had to tell someone how to set up your workstation, I can kind of take you through step by step.
Yeah.
If you want to do something like that.
Yeah.
I'll probably start from the head, kind of work your way down. But first of all, you want your workstation set up directly in front of you, right? As if the slightest tilt, you're now doing this sort of rotation, right? So first things first, make sure it's right in front of you so you don't have to be twisting or turning or leaning in any sort of way. And then the ideal sitting position starts with your eyes about the top third of your monitor. So however, if you need to prop up your laptop on something, which actually I have done right now, you can get creative with big printer paper stacks or a box or, however you need to do that. But you want your eyes falling within that top third of the monitor, which is going to help avoid anything like this where you're looking down all the time. And then we're going to think about our shoulders next. So we want those to be relaxed, rolled down and back, right? We never want to have our shoulders up by our ears. Okay, so then once they're down and back, you're going to think down to your elbows. They should be relaxed around like a 90-degree angle. So if you're just letting your elbows hang by your side, and then your desk height, or like where your keyboard would be, or your mouse, that should fall right under 90 degrees. So if your elbows are at 90, there's just going to be a little bit lower down, and they're just so you can just sit there, relax, and almost like letting everything hang in position. All right, so you're never feeling like you have to hold anything up. And then next thing you want to think about is that keyboard and that mouse and maybe your water bottle. You want those things within arm's length. You never want to have to be reaching too far, or have your keyboard way out in front of you where you're always having to be like this. Right? That's really fatiguing for those poor arms, no matter how strong you are. So then, making sure everything around you is within that arm's reach. And then making sure a big thing with like keyboards and using your mice and whatnot is keeping a neutral wrist. So what I mean by that is if I'm here, right, I don't want to have any tilt to the side one way or the other. Okay, I also don't want to have like a big, huge bend through the wrist, either up or down. So you want to just try to keep it as neutral as possible and then as just relaxed as possible. Right? So then go all the way down to the hand. And now let's think about our hips. Would be the next big thing here is you actually want your hips a tiny bit higher than your knees. So if you're thinking about how you're sitting right now, if you feel like your hips are lower than your knees, you want to prop yourself up. So if you need to grab a pillow, grab a towel, or if you have an adjustable chair, prop that up a little bit. And that's just going to help stack your pelvis in a more natural way. And also just reduce some of the tension on those knees, which I know knee pain's actually been a really common thing. And it's honestly from sitting for so long. And then the last thing I'd touch on is those feet. Is ideally you want those feet, just flat on the ground, uncrossed, nice and stable, sitting there, relaxed. And the one thing I'll add to that is if you're standing, you always want to be thinking about a slight core and glute engagement, which is not a bad thing to think while you're sitting as well, but definitely while you're standing, so you're not just letting your low back, into a vulnerable position in either direction. But that would be, I know I kind of rushed through that, but that would be the checklist I'm thinking through as I'm walking someone through that, either at home or in the office.
That's very helpful. Yeah, I saw myself kind of correcting myself as you're going along. Yeah. No, it's very helpful. Thank you. And you did mention eye level earlier. What happens when it's not at eye level? Are we creating problems? How about, you did mention the mouse angles. Yeah. Is that permanent problems? That stuff that can be?
I wouldn't say I would never say something's permanent, you know, unless something very serious happened. But definitely, I mean, I kind of showed, right, first of all, if the monitor is too high, you're going to be going into this, you know, hyperextension position with our neck. So all these muscles in the back here are constantly pulling and contracting, and these guys in the front are getting lengthened, and that's a little less common. The most common is when it's too low, especially common using laptops these days, right? Because usually at work you can kind of adjust, or you know, the monitors are up high, but with our laptops and our regular desk height, we're all looking down. So we all know that we call it tech neck. Right, so it's like that shoulders roll forward, the muscles in the back get really weak and just start to spread. The muscles in the front get really tight because they're just used to doing this, right? And then you start to drop that head, and then that's where you get those tension headaches, or, you know, a list of different symptoms. But that would definitely be related to eye monitor or monitor level. And then for like keyboard and your mouse, the most common thing related to that would be something like a carpal tunnel syndrome. But then there's lots of things that happen before a full-blown carpal tunnel syndrome, right? Like at first, you'll just start to maybe get elbow pain or maybe wrist pain, and it's not really related to anything other than your work position, or you'll start to get, like, you know, forearm tension, or even some finger numbness. So there's always steps before it gets to that full-blown, you know, carpal tunnel syndrome. But yeah, those things are all definitely related, and that's kind of what I went through. Is you want to keep those wrists as neutral as possible. No variance in or out or bending through the wrist, as neutral as possible, and however you can maintain that, or just never getting stuck in a position out of neutral for a long time.
Very helpful, thank you. I think right now we're at the time where we're gonna transition into the mobility portion.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, I'll stop my video quickly.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna start seated. I have my chair here. I'm just gonna take off my sweater quickly. Just make sure you have some room, because we are gonna go from a seated position up to a standing position and then down to the floor. I'm just gonna start my timer so I can stay on time here. All right, you guys, so this is what I love to do. So I'll cue you guys along. You guys just try to follow. If you feel like you're a little bit lost, just do your best, all right? And all these things you can do as much as you want, or as much as you can throughout the day. We're going to start down at our wrists. So from a seated position, we're just going to clasp our hands. Okay, you're going to keep your elbows in close, and you're going to go through some wrist circles. You're just going in one direction, keeping those shoulders out of your ears. And let's go through the other direction. You might feel some snap, crackle, pops. Honestly, that's normal. If there's pain associated to it, not so normal. Good. All right, now release those hands. We're gonna go up to the shoulders. Let's go through some shoulder circles. Just letting those hands relax down on those thighs. Good. And now let's reverse it, going the other way. Perfect. All right, now we're just gonna do a little posture reset. So you're just gonna have your elbows in close. We'll go palms out. Okay, so I'm just sitting here. Now we're gonna think about those shoulder blades. You're gonna squeeze them together. All right, you should feel a nice stretch through the front of your chest and a nice burn through your shoulder blades. So squeezing, just going back and forth. And all the things we've done so far, you can do seated right at your desk at any time. No excuses. Good. All right, we've gone from the wrists, the shoulders, to the shoulder blades. Now let's go up to the head and neck. So let's start just by bending your right ear over to your right shoulder, and then repeating on the other side. Taking a few big deep breaths as we do this. Good, and now let's start going over, looking over to the sides. Now we're rotating. Please don't be cheating and don't be rotating through the torso. Okay, so you're just focusing on the head and neck as if you're shoulder checking in your car. Trying to reach a little bit further each rep. All right, and last but not least here, we're gonna look down to the ground and then up towards the sky. Again, not curling down to the torso, we're just using our head and neck. Miriam, you might recognize some of these from our old warm-ups. All right, you guys. I'm going to turn to the side so you can see this one. We'll still be in a seated position. You're going to place your hands right on the edges of your knees and you're going to lean forward just a little bit. All right, from here, we're going to start by arching and then sinking, just getting some nice flexion and extension through our spine. Arch, extend. Good. Tuck your chin at the bottom and then reach up with that chin to the sky, getting a full spine movement all the way from the tailbone up to the neck. Couple more. Big deep breaths as we do this. All right, for the next one, we'll just come back to neutral in your seated position. I'm just gonna back up a touch. From here, we're gonna take our hands up overhead and clasp your hands together. We're gonna think about reaching our hands up and then over one way. Good, coming back up and over the other way. Just moving at your own pace here. Good, try to think about keeping those shoulders out of your ears. Okay, don't let them start to shrug up. We already do too much of that at our desks or when we're stressed. So this is supposed to be stress relieving. Taking big deep breaths, moving a little bit further side to side. Couple more. Perfect. All right, you can drop those arms down, shake it out if you need to. We're now going to start transitioning to a standing position. So I like to call these sit to stand transitions, and that's exactly as it sounds. You're going to get yourself ready to come up to standing without using momentum. Okay, so it's almost like a squat. So get your feet right underneath your knees. All right, I like to have my hands out in front of me, and I'm just going to prop myself up all the way to the top and then drop it all the way back down. We're just doing those squats here, body weight squats. Try not to be using momentum. Squeeze those glutes at the top. Couple more, you guys. All right, let's stay up standing, and we can actually get rid of the chair so we don't trip on it. All right, so I'll just move that out of the way. We're going to be up in the beginning.
Take away my video so people can see you better now. There we go.
Perfect. Okay. So we're here standing, and let's go into a knee hug. So I'll turn to the side so you can see. I'm just going to be picking up one knee, hugging it in towards my chest, and then switching to the other side. All right, so we're opening up those hips as we do this. Staying nice and tall, all right? As I hug my knee, I don't want to be slouching down. Once again, we do so much of that already throughout the day. Here's a chance to move out of those positions, out of that cast. Stay nice and tall. Working on some balance as we do this. All right, now we're going to turn this into a quad stretch. You're going to grab one ankle, pull it in, and then reach with the opposite hand, hold it for a second, and then switch. Going back and forth. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a lot of space around your workstation, you can always turn this into a walking motion. So I'm going to step, stretch, step, stretch. All right, so just keep going there. Making it work depending on your workspace. All right, from here, we're gonna go down into a forward fold. So let's start to reach those hands down towards the ground. If you need to bend your knees here, please do. All right, just make it work for you. You can always modify. If you have the flexibility, please try to extend those knees, looking for a really great hamstring stretch. Those muscles behind your thighs. We're gonna hold here for a couple seconds. You wanna shift your weight over on one leg, then shift it over to the other side. That's totally okay. You have a yoga mat. This is where you can set it up, but you definitely don't need one. Just need some floor space. Keep stretching the backs of those legs. All right, now let's plant those hands down and start to walk those hands out to a push-up plank. So we're holding a plank. We get a little core action while we're here. Okay, we're gonna hold this here for 3, 2, 1. Drop those knees down. You're gonna be on all fours, like a crawling position. You're looking for your wrists directly underneath your shoulders, your knees directly underneath your hips. And this is where you're gonna start to arch your spine up like an angry cat, and then drop it all the way down like a happy cow. Please move at your own rhythm. Taking some big, deep breaths as we go through this. Going nice and slow to start. And then you can start to go a little bit faster if you're feeling comfortable. Good, keep going, you guys. Keep going up through that cat and cow. All right, let's come back through neutral. Let's bring your knees a little bit wider and bring your toes slightly together. As we now are going to sit our hips back onto your heels, reaching your hands up overhead, letting your head drop down towards the floor. Okay, keep reaching those hands. Reach, reach, reach. Inch them forward. Sit those hips back. You're pulling in opposite directions. And now just relax those elbows down. Relax that head down. Couple big deep breaths here. All right, from here, we're going to start to walk your hands all the way over to the left to start. So your hands are over to the left, your hips are still down on your heels, and you're reaching those hands to the left. You should feel a great stretch down the right side of your rib cage. Big deep breath to intensify that stretch. Keep reaching, guys. All right, let's walk those hands back through the center, and then we'll go over to the other side. Okay, so hands go all the way over to the right, or whichever side you haven't done yet. Hips are still back, and now we're stretching the side body on the left side, if you're following my lefts and rights. Noticing if one side feels tighter than the other, making a mental note of that. Maybe going back and spending a little extra time in that stretch after this. Big deep breaths, you guys. All right, coming back through center. One last big stretch through the front, and then pull yourself back up to your hands and knees. And we're gonna come up into a half kneeling position. So let's start. I'll walk you guys through it, follow my cues. Right knee down, left foot up. Okay, I'll go to the side, so you'll see my right knee is down, my left foot is up, making sure that foot is right underneath that knee. All right, from here, let's all go hands on our hips. Okay, and we're gonna tuck that tailbone under. So a way to think about this is if you had a tail, all right, you wanna try to tuck that tail between your legs. Right away, with all of us with really tight hip flexors from sitting all day, you should start to feel a really great stretch, a really concentrated stretch to the front of that hip. Stay nice and tall. Keep tucking that tailbone. Keep squeezing those glutes. Squeeze your core. And holding here. If you're lucky enough to have really nice and open, mobile hip flexors, and this doesn't feel like enough of a stretch, please take, if whatever knee is down, so I guess my right knee, take your right hand, reach it up, and then reach it over. That's really going to intensify that stretch up that hip area. Keep holding for 3, 2, 1. Moving on out of that, we're going to move right into the other side. All right, so now if you're following me, left knee down, right foot up. Let's go hands on those hips. Let's tuck that tailbone under. You should feel those glutes squeeze. Keep them squeezing, keep them active. Stay nice and tall through the torso. Big deep breaths, and once again, it's always available to reach up and over if you feel like you need more of a stretch, but don't force it. A few more breaths. 3, 2, 1. All right, coming on out of that, making our way all the way down to our back. So laying down. All right, we're gonna go into a figure 4 stretch. So I'll guide you through this. You're going to take both knees bent. You're going to take your right foot and cross it over your left thigh. All right, from here, you should look down and there's like a little window created with your legs. You're going to reach your right hand through, grab the back of your left thigh, and then relax your head and neck down as you feel a stretch on that right side or whatever leg you have crossed over. Okay, so important things here are relaxing the head and neck down, pulling that thigh in, looking for a stretch in the hip and the glutes. Taking nice big deep breaths. I'll count you guys down. In 3, 2, 1. All right, let's uncross those legs, let go of those legs, shake it out if you need to. And now let's move on to the other side. So if you're following me, you're gonna have your right foot bent up on the floor. Your left leg's gonna come up and over the right. You're gonna see that little window and you're gonna reach through, grab the back of that thigh as you sit on back and stretch out that hip, stretch out those glutes. Remember to breathe. Doing your best here. If you know a different option that works best for your body, that is always available. Big deep breaths, last few seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, uncross, and now we're gonna add a little bit of activity, okay, a little bit of energy through these hips. We're gonna have both feet planted. We'll have our hands right down by our sides. From here, you're gonna lift those hips all the way up for a glute bridge, squeeze those glutes at the top, and then drop them on back down. Let's come all the way up, squeeze, and back down. If you're comfortable here, feel free to go a little bit faster. This is your first time, right? Take your time, get comfortable in the position. Bring some fire back into these hips. Bring some energy back into our bodies. Couple more times. Big deep breaths. 3, 2, 1. All right, from here, we're gonna roll all the way over to our bellies. We're gonna be down on our bellies. And then from here, we're gonna push right on up to those hands and knees. Okay, we're gonna finish with some inchworms. So of course, I'll guide you through this. For our inchworms, we're gonna start in that push-up plank position. So hands down under the shoulders, legs back, and then now as slowly as you can, start to walk your feet up towards your hands. Okay, trying to keep those legs extended, but if we need to bend those knees because of those hamstrings, that's okay. We'll be back in this forward fold. We're gonna come all the way up to standing, reach up, 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 reach those hands all the way up to the sky. Keep reaching. Keep reaching, keep reaching for 3, 2, 1. Drop those hands down by your side, and we're just going to finish with a quick breath work session here. For this, we're going to start off by finding our strong neutral position. So we're going to start with our feet underneath those hips stacked over those ankles, those shoulders rolling down and back, all right? And then palms facing forward. And then the last thing is we're going to have those ears over our shoulders. We might have to do a bit of a chin tuck. I know it's not the prettiest thing, so we might, we all get those double chins, but, that's our strong neutral position. Let's hold it here. And now I'm gonna let you guys breathe at your own pace for 3 cycles of breath. So that's gonna be a full inhale and a full exhale 3 times at your own pace. Okay, big, huge inhales, letting it all go, big, huge exhales. And then once you're done those 3 cycles of breaths, you can just shake things out, right? Maybe go back to your chair, maybe just find a comfortable seated position on the ground, or stay standing. I hope you guys are feeling good.
Oh, sorry. That was great. Great, thank you.
Of course. Brought you a little energy back.
Let's see. So we have a couple of questions too. I'm
just gonna grab my chair.
Yeah, sorry. I'll start without you.
Okay.
All right, so I've got the first question pulled up. And so, is it good to have, oops, sorry, wrong one. What advice do you have for couples or families who have one or more people who aren't interested in physical activity or getting moving? Are there any ideas that you have on how to get them started?
That's obviously a personal question, right? Like, depending on the person, depending on the couple, the relationship. But what comes to mind right away would be get creative with what movement is, right? It doesn't have to be an exercise class. It doesn't have to be a yoga class. It doesn't have to be going out for a run. You know, you can get really, it could be a hike, it could be a walk, it could be a dancing class, it could be martial arts, right? We always get, you know, stuck in these boxes of what exercise is, but there's so much variety out there. So maybe it's sitting down together and being like, okay, when do I feel the best? Like, is it after I've been dancing all night? Is it after I've done a yoga class? And then holding each other accountable. I know accountability sometimes, you know, kind of comes off naggy, or it comes off like rude sometimes, like, oh, I see that you didn't, you know, do your workout this morning. But at the end of the day, holding someone accountable is just trying to better them. You're trying to help them better themselves. So it's maybe being clear with your communication of like, when I say these things, I'm not doing it, you know, for my benefit. I'm doing it because I know you've said you want to get moving more, and I'm just trying to hold you accountable. So I bet it comes down to communication, and then having to get creative with what those movement options are.
That's funny. You actually just reminded me of something my dad does for me. He lives on the other side of the country, lives in Connecticut, and almost every day or every other day, he sends me his Map My Run workout. Like, he'll just go for whether it's a mile or 6 miles. And I got him into running and I stopped. So now that's his little motivation for me. And that's how I started too. I love extra ideas.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great one.
All right, let's see. We got another one. Okay, so should the full stretching routine be done end of the day, multiple times a day? It was refreshing, but don't feel like I can do it during my work day time-wise.
Totally. So that's where it's like whatever you have time for, right? So, and that's going to change day by day. We also get really caught up in being like, oh, I have to do this every day at the same time for the same amount of time, where it's like, that's not always realistic. So even let's say you pick one exercise that we just did, let's say the wrist circles. And I mean, I think everyone can fit some wrist circles in their day, even when they're at work, reading an email or on the phone or something. So it's maybe just choosing 1 or 2 things to do throughout the day. And then, every other day, really making time for some movement, if that's mobility, if that's stretching, if that's out for a walk. But yeah, it comes down to some boundaries. And as for like time of day, and that's we're getting down to, very specific musculoskeletal condition where, symptoms are worse at different times of the day. If we're not dealing with anything specific like that, it's whenever you can fit it in. It's whenever, you think you can make 10 to 15 minutes and get through one of these sort of sessions or, whatever you're going to be working through on your own. Time of day, it just comes down to when it's doable. Personally, I'm a morning person, so I do everything I can in the morning for myself, and then whatever I do throughout the day is extra. But I know, my fiance is the total opposite, and he's the one who'll go for a run at 9 p.m. while I'm already in bed. So it's totally dependent on the person, depending on the routine. But I would just say trying to just take little chunks, little realistic, that you can commit to.
I'll go to the next one. What are your opinions on standing desks?
Ooh, I like them because it's giving you variety. I think you can also cause just as many problems standing than you can sitting, right? Because standing for 8 hours a day is a sedentary position. You're just in a standing position versus a sitting position. So if you're using them correctly, or if you're using them to your advantage, where ideally you have the option to go sit to stand. And I know, those, if they're electric, those are very expensive, or if they're kind of cumbersome when you have to put a podium up on the desk and then you have to put your computer on. So if you find a way that you can, you know, maybe the first half of your day you go standing, then the second half of your day you go sitting, or if you have the ability to like really switch it, literally 1 hour on, 1 hour off, 1 hour on, 1 hour off. It's a really easy way to add those micro movements that we kind of talked about, different workstations. There's 2 workstations in one if you're using it sitting and standing. So I love them. I know through, you know, through school and whenever I'm having to do computer work, I gravitate towards a standing, but I always have a chair nearby, because as soon as I start to feel myself fatigue and either, you know, lean to the one side or put all my weight on one leg, that's my cue to say, oh, I'm tired. Let's not hang out in that leaning position. Let's sit down for a bit, and then we can pick back up where we left off.
That's awesome. And we'll go to the next one. The sitting ones are more realistic for sure. Thank you for your response. So that was just them saying thank you. And then we got the next one. When would you recommend the use of ice or heat with teenagers having back pain from sitting all day taking classes online?
I was gonna say, yeah, kids shouldn't have back pain. So before I talk about ice and heat, I know I'm just trying to, you know, in the best case scenario, trying to figure out how we talked about giving them multiple workstation options so they don't always have to be stuck in that position. But back to the ice and heat. With my patients, what I say is whatever you like best. Some people respond really well to ice. Some people really respond to heat. I hate the cold, even though I'm from Canada. I hate it. So I'm heat for everything, you know, unless I have this huge goose egg that's like throbbing and you can just tell is really swollen and probably not going to respond to heat in the right way. I'm going to, you know, skip over that. But for just general achy, tight, I personally go for heat, but I also know people who hate heat and use ice for everything. So it's whatever you can, back to what I've been saying, is whatever you can do consistently. So, you know, if they love heat and they're going to actually do it and it actually helps them, then stick to heat. And what I prescribe, just to keep it easy for people, is 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off. And you can repeat that as much as you want. Of course, you know, taking precautions, if you're using an ice pack, don't put the ice pack directly on your skin. Put a thin layer of like a tea towel or, you know, a t-shirt or something, wrap it up just to, you know, protect. You don't want to burn your skin from the cold. And same thing with heat. You want to, you know, protect yourself. But just to keep it easy, 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, and then, you know, sticking to whatever makes them feel the best. And I would start them by choosing, you know, one, you know, trying both and then seeing how they react and then just kind of following through. And I know with heat, there's those amazing little stick-on pads that you put on your back. I think they're like Salon Pas. They're like little sticky pads. I know I have some patients that swear by them. So there's so many little tips and tricks out there. But yeah, either like a heating pad or finding those little sticky pads. You can find some good options.
Thanks. And all right, we've got another one. Do you have any YouTube mobility sessions that we could do with our children? And if so, can you share them?
Absolutely. I'd love to share them. I know we have a handful of YouTube specific links to essentially very similar to what we just did. I think maybe just a little bit longer or maybe some even a little bit shorter. But we've also launched our own completely virtual on-demand, not only training program, but there's also active recovery sessions in there. I haven't thought of them as doing them with kids, but I'm sure you could try them with your kids and, you know, see how much they would like them. But yeah, I'm happy to follow up. Like I can follow up through you, Miriam, and send you guys some links. And I know right now our on-demand training program has a free 7-day trial right now. So that could be fun for you guys to check it out and then see if you guys want to stick with it. But yeah, we definitely have some online resources that I'm happy to share with whoever.
We will, for those of you watching, we'll add that into our event recap email so you guys can have that accessible to you.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, Annalise.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. We do appreciate the nature of your suggestions being realistic and attainable for us to implement into our busy everyday lives. And in the interest of everyone's respective busy schedules, it's my cue to, for those of you that joined us on today's call, thank you for your time. And we hope you learned a little something new to support your holistic health and wellness. We wish you and your families continued safety and good health. And we'll see you at our next virtual event. Thank you.
Thank you guys.